People who quit their jobs on the first day, what made you say, I'm done with this?
It was a food truck owned by this Russian dude. His cash register was so convoluted. He'd be like, to sell hot dog push burger, then subtract 2 sodas and a small fry. Then he just left me alone. It was overwhelming and I just didn't come back.
Line job in a factory that assembled magazines. Because of all the paper sliding along the tracks, little bits would gum up the gears and they wanted us to reach inside and pull out all the wads of paper scrap about once an hour while someone manually held down a button that paused the machine from moving. Refused, clocked out for lunch and left.
Oh, by the way, we never mentioned it at the interview, but you will get 50% pay for 6 months till your trial period is over. I was halfway into my first shift when they sprang that on me. I turned around and walked out. No discussion. Didn't say a word. Just left.
When I found out their time clock system didn't track hours worked, but the minutes spent typing or moving your mouse. And it'd take random screenshots too. If you're in a video meeting, I guess they get to take pictures of you too. All that, and they wanted this installed on my personal computer. That and a few other reasons made me back out after one day.
I was laid off from my first job back when I was in high school due to the housing crisis in the 2000s. I was a dishwasher at a restaurant. When new management took over, they offered everyone their old jobs back, and I accepted. I tried to take my CD player that I had left there before the layoff home with me, and I was told that I was stealing as it was company property since it was there when they took over. Everyone in the kitchen attested that it was my CD player, but the new manager wouldn't hear of it, so I just walked out with it. I was called later that night by HR telling me I was fired for stealing company property. I guess I didn't quit, but I was going to do it anyway.
I was between jobs and got a temp job helping with payroll, and they told me I would have to hold paychecks for people who did not return their uniform, and when I pointed out this was illegal, and showed them the law, they said to do it anyway, so I quit and went back on unemployment until I found a real job 3 weeks later. Quitting a job because they want you to break the law gets you unemployment in most states.
It was a telemarketing company selling timeshares around the US. My first call was an old lady who told me the story of how her husband fell down the stairs 2 weeks ago and died right in front of her. My manager was over my shoulder listening in and said something like, "Okay, now pitch the package." I left immediately.
It was supposed to be a B2B sales job. First day I get paired with a highly successful, veteran salesman, and we go downtown. Next thing I know, we're walking into a Jiffy Lube waiting area, and the guy I'm with busts out a box of makeup samples and starts trying to sell makeup to the people waiting for their oil to get changed. We leave and I'm like, "Yo, WTF, I thought this was B2B sales." He's like, "Well, I do go from business to business doing sales." I'm like, "Mother effer, that's door to door, not business to business, LOL. I asked to be brought back to my car and never called those fools back.
In high school, a friend of mine talked up this warehouse job he had for an online surplus store. They gave him a bunch of free electronics and sports equipment. As a high school student, that seemed pretty cool, so I decided to try working there for the summer. Now I realize that was a red flag. On my first day they asked me to package a commercial range hood that had to be shipped to Alaska. They had no packing material or boxes and refused to buy any. I created a box by piecing together scraps of cardboard and covered them in a ton of tape, then I filled the box with crumpled printer paper from the office. The manager saw me doing this and proceeded to yell at me for 10 minutes, because I wasted their printer paper. I laughed at him and walked out of there. Of course, my friend later told me the range hood was destroyed in shipping and the manager was livid. A year later the business was busted for selling stolen GPS units.
I got a summer job as an HR/office assistant while in college. They told me on my first day that they had to fire some people later in the week and they needed me to do it because they didn't want to. I didn't come back the next day. Not only did I of course not want to do it, but I was shocked at the callous disrespect they had for the employees that they wanted to fire. If you want to destroy someone's livelihood, have the balls to effing do it yourself.
I got a job in town X. On the first day they told me tomorrow I needed to show up to a different office in San Francisco, which is a 90-minute commute there and a 2 to 3 hour commute home. Not what I signed up for. They legit could not understand why I was leaving.
I was a cold caller trying to solicit donations for an organization. Called a guy. His widow answered the phone saying he had recently passed. Supervisor said I should try and get the widow to make a donation. I was done.
I was assigned to a middle school grade 6 as a student teacher. I was supposed to be under the guidance of the classroom teacher. She was all too willing to let me be in complete charge and told me I could just do whatever. I called my faculty advisor and requested to be reassigned. The next day, I was at a different school with a teacher who knew what she was doing.
I remember starting a job at a call center for a particular company that has such a bad reputation, they need to change their name every so often. They were telling us how we have 7 minutes allotted for personal time, like bathroom breaks. There was one bathroom in the building, way down at the other end of the building, so on our first 15-minute break, I walked to it, took 4.5 minutes to get there. So when we came back from break I asked, so what happens if you go over the allotted time? And the trainer goes, well then the minutes are tracked and deducted from your pay. I got up and walked towards the door and the guy goes, see that's an example of complete unprofessionalism, and that's okay, this type of job isn't for quitters. I spun around and went, I can handle the job, chucklefuck. What I won't do is degrade myself by working for a place that monitors how long it takes you to shit.
Not quite the first day, I have a mortgage, but been through the entire interview process, small pay rise plus quite a generous company pension. All confirmed in writing. Cool, thinks, I'll leave my existing job and start at the new place. A week or two in, HR does their induction. And the generous company pension doesn't exist. It's statutory minimum. Obviously I raise this, because that's not what I signed up for. The answer comes back, tough, that's the pension. Excuse me, but we agreed in writing that it wasn't. Don't care, that's the pension. They were astonished when I put in my resignation, about a month later.
I took a job as a residential maintenance tech for a 500-unit apartment complex. The company that owned the complex owned about 2,000 units all over the city. I've been doing maintenance for 10 years at this point and I know my shit. Anyway, they send me out with this meth head-looking dude to train me. We do a few work orders and I watch him ghetto-rig stuff instead of actually fixing it. I kept my mouth shut until he decided to duct tape a clearly busted sewer stack. I was like, bro, I saw Fernco's is the shop, let's just get a Fernco. He literally tore into me about him having seniority, and he won't be told what to do by some guy who just started. Whatever, I bit my tongue cause I had bills to pay. The next work order after that, we go into this woman's apartment while she was at work to fix her sink. He tells me the tenant is hot as F and goes into her laundry basket and pulls out a pair of panties to sniff. That was it for me. I walked out, went to the leasing office, explained what my last 4 hours were like, and I would be contacting the authorities and the news about what I witnessed. They offered me $3,000 to keep my mouth shut. Unfortunately, I needed the money so I took it.
Got hired as a farmhand for a potato farmer as a summer job from college, minimum wage through the local job office where I was told, this guy has gone through a lot of workers. First thing he told me to do was change the oil in the tractor and pointed to where things were. Now I had changed the oil in my car, but that hardly compared. I managed. Next, I was given a suicide jack and told to walk out to the field where a 40-inch tire on one of those huge sprinkler systems had slipped off the railroad tie going over the ditch and use the jack to get it lifted out of the ditch and somehow use my 130 pounds frame to move it back onto the railroad tie. I managed. Lunchtime came, and I had trudged back from the field with the jack. The farmer sees me and says, "I'm going to the house for lunch, please eat in your car." Luckily, I had brought my own lunch, but it was 90 degrees out and I was a sweaty filthy mess from what I had done so far and had no way to clean up. I managed. For the afternoon, the farmer had me perch on the back of the potato planter while he drove it down the field, and I had to hop back and forth between the planter bins and manually make sure the potatoes were dropping into the feeder tubes. I managed. Got a call shortly after getting home, asking if I'd like an assembly line job in an air-conditioned factory. Never went back to the potato farm.
Work in IT and got a new job as a sysadmin, and on the first day found support tickets where the guy before me was required to track every second of his time through it. Several tickets that read something like, "Cleaned office, 15 minutes. No thanks. I'm not a child that needs supervision." Luckily my old job let me come back like I never left.
I was injured and they told me to keep working. I was loading trucks at RPS, by the way. Went to the boss and said, "Who do I tell if I want to quit?" He responded, "Me." I said, "Okay, I quit." He asked me to finish my shift, but I laughed in his face.
After 3 interviews, negotiations, and tests, they agreed on my salary, and we started on Monday. I come in, do all the paperwork, and get assigned a PC, desk, etc. Before coming in, I saw the red flag that they had a high turnover, but they agreed on a really good salary for me. All of a sudden, I get an email from CEO that he wants to test me again and gave me 3 complex tasks from his side business totally unrelated to my skills and position in the company, like asking a doctor to write a code. He told me, "Just do it 'cause you're working for me from now on." I stood up and went through the door. Half an hour later, the HR calls me and asks to come back. I told her to have a good day and never contact me again. At my new job, I have a colleague who worked there for 1 year. She started telling me crazy stories about the boss and the company. I didn't dodge a bullet, but rather a rocket strike.
Only time I've ever just walked off a job site. I was homeless and answered a Craigslist ad for a roofing job. I'd never done roofing before. I was working for a pair of tweakers from NYC. After spending most of the day doing standard labor, bringing materials up a ladder, putting down roofing material and stomping down on it after they hit it with a blowtorch, etc., they wanted me to stand on a 2-inch wide beam that was rotten and slick from rain, visibly unstable, with no restraints or safety equipment whatsoever, and they wanted me to stand on it and use a sledgehammer to smash out as much decaying roof as I could, until I hit a point where the roof was solid again. I told the guy I wasn't cut out for that type of work. He told me to quit being an upstate vagina. I told him to find a downstate penis because someone is going to die under their tutelage and I'm not going to let it be me. He refused to pay me for the 6 hours of intense physical labor I'd already worked, and I had to panhandle to get bus fare back, but I didn't die.
Basic restaurant server job. I was in college. The drive was kinda long, and as a college student that matters a lot. I was mostly getting a job due to feeling like I was inadequate if I didn't have one. So I go buy the black clothes required and show up. But the clothes weren't black enough, due to having a gray lining around the button-up shirt's collar and cuffs on the inside of the shirt. It barely peeked through under certain angles. They told me to leave and come back when the clothes fit their requirements. So I drove back to campus, called them up, and quit on the phone. It was just way too much BS to deal with and did not bode well.
I was in high school, working 3 part-time jobs. I had gotten hired as a cashier at a supermarket. I really just wanted to be a stock boy, but oh well. I show up to work and the manager isn't there. So I just start asking people like, "Hey, I'm new, how do I clock in? What do I do?" Eventually someone clocks me in like an hour late. They put me on a register, show me the produce code sheet like once, then left me alone. No clue how to do a sale, no idea how to do coupons, etc. The manager shows up halfway through and yells at me, in front of a customer, for not knowing produce codes. Even the customer was like, "Hey, it's his first day. Calm down. Time for my lunch break." Nobody has shown me where the staff room is, so I just buy lunch from the store and eat it in the cafe area. Manager storms in, takes my tray, throws the rest of my food away, and goes off that I cannot eat where customers are, that I'm stupid, etc. I just got up, threw the apron at her, and walked out. Absolutely ridiculous. I did, however, go back and demand my check for hours worked. Because F that.
I got this job cold calling local businesses to sell them printer toner subscriptions. Weirdest, most awkward job prospect I've ever encountered. Came in at around 4 p.m. Place was an empty room with a desk against one wall, a PC, and a phone. Owner had an office in the back. Owner has me put together his office chair for him. Watch him try to write an email, he can barely write a coherent sentence. Finish the chair. Then instructs me to pull up a program on the PC and call the numbers, ask them if they want to buy toner subscriptions. Okay. Spend the next 3 hours awkwardly calling places, asking if they want to buy toner. No script, no product descriptions, no printer models, completely flying by the seat of my pants. Many ask if I will install it for them. I don't know. No one on either side has any idea what's going on. I leave, immediately text that I'm not coming back. Owner texts back that I'm not qualified for the position. Never got paid for the 4 hours.
I was a GM car salesman half a day. Family of 5 come in and settle on a Pontiac Catalina. Sales manager told me to squeeze another $275 from them. I went to family, cut $500 from the contract, turned it in and sent them home in a new ride. Told sales manager I was done and left.
I was a motorcycle salesman and my first day I had a guy come in trying to buy his first bike. They refused to give me the price and kept wanting me to just find out how much he could afford a month. They wanted to add like another $2,000 to the price just because they could. I told the customer and never went back. F you Freedom Powersports, I hope your company gets sued into oblivion.
Not me but a friend. This friend is a very good-looking woman. It was to be her first job out of college working as a research tech in the lab of a Nobel Prize winner. She thought it was weird that at her interview he told her she needed to wear a skirt to work since he wanted people to look professional, but in a lab? Since he was older from a more formal time she thought, oh well okay. At the first lab meeting he sits next to her at the table while one of the students/postdocs is making a presentation. As soon as the lights went down she feels a hand on her thigh and it's the Nobel laureate and he is working his hand up her thigh. She squirms but doesn't do anything and quit that day. I asked her why she didn't go to HR and she said she didn't think it would matter since he was Mr. Big Shot. Later turns out she's heard stories about him from multiple female employees. He died before he could get me to Ed.
I applied to a local newspaper for advertising sales, thinking I would be making a lot of cold calls. Instead I was being trained on ways to sneak past things like front desk reception so that I could knock directly on a business owner's office doors. This was in a small town where I knew a lot of the local business owners already, and the thought of behaving that way around people I had known my whole life was just distasteful. That and learning there was no wage, just commission. I did that first day of training and then at the end of the day gave them back all the training materials and apologized for wasting their time, but that I couldn't see myself doing very well at that job.
I came in to be one of 4 retail managers for a museum with 4 stores. While training me I overheard multiple associates, who I would be managing, swearing and yelling at customers. Then one of the other managers training me to log the safe yelled and screamed at me that I didn't know how to count cause the safe was $1 short. We later found the dollar on the floor behind the desk she had been counting at. Then the district manager above me spent the entire day sitting at the cameras listing reasons to write up associates which included Seeing the outline of a girl's phone through her back pocket even though she never took it out, an associate going to the bathroom twice. During his shift, they were only permitted one break apparently, and an associate not asking literal children to donate to the museum. Great first day. Even better last day.
2 hours into my first shift at a glassware shop, I'd broken 175 pounds worth of stuff by accident while dusting the shelves, while wrapping items that a customer had just bought, and some things I swear broke just because I existed too closely to them. The owner, who was the artist/glassblower, to his infinite credit didn't want to charge me or take it out of my pay. He actually said I did a great job with the customers and wanted me to stay, but my nerves couldn't take it, so I walked out. Carefully.
Started a sales job just after graduating, which I was happy to do because I'd done what I thought was a similar job while studying. Morning was as expected, induction stuff, a few odd characters. Manager seemed okay. After lunch, they said okay, now we need to get in a car and go do some door-to-door sales. This was supposed to be an office based on the phone type of job, so I was already thinking, nope. After about 45 minutes of chatter and slight panic because the person who usually took people around had gone off somewhere, someone asked if a car with a specific reg plate belonged to anyone. It was my car. Manager asked me to drive the team to an area of town for the door-to-door. They said they'd give me a separate payment for fuel. I said my insurance wouldn't cover them, so I can't take the risk. They said to call my insurance and confirm. I said I'd go outside to do that while having a cigarette. I did not smoke. I got in my car and went home.
Got hired to be a machinist, which I had years of experience, show up first day and did usual paperwork stuff, then expected to be sent to shop and run Haas machines. Instead they said, well, we're fully staffed in machine shop and we're transferring you to fiberglass department, which I had no experience. Walked into shop and it was a total nightmare with no PPE devices or a turret booth, and told you'll be fine. Stood around till lunch, then just left. Idiots called me every day for a week wondering where I was. That job has now been posted on Indeed for 3 straight years, LOL.